This is the Knysna Oyster Festival, home to the legendary Big 5 Sports Challenge, where top athletes take part in no less than 5 major sporting events. All in only 10 days as they battle for the podium amongst some of the most beautiful scenery in the world, here in South Africa's favourite town, Knysna. Last year saw 65,000 visitors experience South Africa's premium holiday festival. With hundreds of activities for the whole family, this year promises to be even bigger and better. The Big 5 Challenge offers competitors the opportunity to participate in every major event. For some athletes, it's the highlight of their year, with everything from mountain biking to trail running, cycle races, canoe races and much, much more. The Knysna Oyster Festival has been part of this town for over 30 years. Known as the heart of the garden route, Knysna is the perfect getaway for city dwellers. With pristine areas, lush natural indigenous forests and more, it's a beautiful backdrop to any outdoor enthusiast. No matter what your idea of a perfect holiday is, the festival has something for everyone. From running, cycling and adventure racing, to wine and whiskey tastings, to food and wine pairing, gala evenings, the Young Oyster Festival and of course, oysters. For those less adventurous, Knysna has a myriad of hotels, restaurants and other nightlife venues that host a number of events, from braai competitions to oyster eating and oyster shucking duels, fun and games for the kids and parents alike. The festival also focuses on development in the Knysna community by assisting in funding and hosting many community projects, such as events for the disabled and the Knysna soccer tournament. Knysna really has something for everyone, so why not make the trip to the heart of the garden route to see why this festival boasts being the best 10 days of your winter.
We unpack this new vision with chairperson of Knysna Tourism, Gerg Vogt. Greg, thank you so much for making the time to join us today. Let's start by looking at the landscape. How big is tourism as part of the economic offering of this region?
First of all, you speak of a region, so garden route is obviously tourism dominated, but there's a lot of other economic drivers that that play a major role. And whilst tourism is recognised as one of the bigger drivers, we mustn't neglect the other areas, because they still feed into tourism, right, if you're creative about it. So percentage-wise, you're probably looking at about 50%.
That's quite an impressive percentage, but there's also this negative perception that this is not for the ordinary folk of South Africa, and that domestic tourism must make up a very small percentage of what happens down here. Is that an accurate perception?
No, I think that's just a perception, and if one goes and digs down into the inventory, we have something for everyone, and we play a major role in the domestic market.
Right. Of course, understanding that the entire industry, underwent a bit of a downturn with the economic slump. How did business models and product and service offerings change to build resilience during that time?
Well, first of all, as we spoke earlier on about the inventory, we have a very diverse inventory to offer people. And yes, there were people that took a hit, which is natural. But there were very creative initiatives to get people to hedge against the downturn. Right. And it was very interesting to see how they did it. And I was actually very impressed with specifically the Knysna Sedgefield, the Greater Knysna area, how many products grew in that time. Right. What we have done is it's actually stimulated us to have a re-look at our economy and look at what we've neglected, and we've learned from this. Very interesting paper written by Yoon on models in crisis periods, and we've learned from that model to go back to the basics and rebuild assets that we've neglected during the good times.
Of course, one of the things that you are relooking at this time is the brand of Knysna. How are you reviewing the brand, and how do you wish to reposition this offering?
It's an interesting question, because I think that if you had to put out a question to most of the people in South Africa, they would be very aware of what brand Knysna is to them. I think it's the people in Knysna that haven't actually grasped the fact of brand. And that's interesting, because we are a place full of famous people, and some of the biggest industry leaders live in this area. But I think when they take a break from their economic lives, they don't want to get involved in actually running Knysna. So we've neglected the concept of brand. And what we've been through is a discovery process of ourselves. And it's come out at very much what people and how people perceive us, which is naturally Knysna. And in that, we go back to the inventory, and we look at what makes us who we are. And we've then seen what we've neglected. And that is empowering us to go and build capacity in the right areas to relook at what is important within our economy. So,
in terms of brand Knysna, in a nutshell, in a few words, what is the promise of this region?
Naturally Knysna speaks to the lifestyle that people come here to live. It's energized by nature. It's inspired by nature. And to live a sustainable lifestyle, we have a massive responsibility. There are indicator species out there that our lifestyle will impact on if we don't live responsibly. So we have the Brenton blue butterfly, Orochrysopsis niobe, which is endemic to the area. We have 2 endemic red data species of butterfly. We have the sand fynbos. We have the chameleon, the dwarf chameleon. We have Hippocampus capensis, the Knysna seahorse. And so I can go on naming all these little indicator species, and they, as the word and as the term says, they are the indicators that measure our sustainable lifestyle. So we've got to live naturally. We've got to, the brand promise is in our delivery to sustain those little species.
Right, now in my excitement of coming here, I obviously posted on my Facebook page that I was going to Knysna, and literally everybody responded and said, Oyster Festival, Oyster Festival, Oyster Festival. So tell me a little bit how you've gotten this key right in terms of using events to really direct the majority of the traffic that comes through here.
Okay, so earlier on you spoke about the domestic market, and we use events to drive the domestic market, and the Pick and Pay Oyster Festival is one of our flagships. It is a huge festival, and built into that are 2 key concepts. One is living local, where we utilize the festival to drive and build local economic unique products. And the second one is Festival 365, where we draw initiatives that are developed through the festival and through the inertia created within the festival through 365 days a year. And they are all domestic orientated, and they're all community driven. And then finally about the festival, there's almost a 1-to-1 ratio. For every R1 of sponsorship, R1 goes back into the community through a very, very, very unique model where each of the events give to a charity. And we're putting back almost more than what comes into the festival from sponsorship.
It certainly sounds like you've put people at the epicenter of your business model, but perhaps let's look forward a little bit. What are you planning to do differently to ensure that you sustain your competitiveness, but also attract even larger shares of tourists to this area?
One of the things, we're dropping the word tourism. So Knysna is Knysna. And by recognizing all its assets, and I'm talking about products, natural assets, assets that cultural assets, stuff that we've inherited, we have a responsibility to almost, how can I say, nurture a lot of those products forward. Now, by focusing on the entire economy, you're bringing in different areas of benefit to the tourism industry. Businesses, corporate business events, going out there. We've got one company here called Steady Drone. Every time one of those companies that work and play in the international arena, carry our brand out there, we're reaching a market that we never necessarily reached before. So we're harnessing the energy of all the successful businesses in Knysna to market Knysna and reach new channels.
We're on the cusp of silly season now, and this must be very, very good business time for you. What are your expectations in the next coming months?
The local numbers over this time of the year have always been good. There's a migration of areas of focus, people staying from overseas, staying longer, local people tending to go more for the rental pool rather than staying in guest houses and hotels. I think the focus is to look at each month and make each month better. And your profit is not necessarily coming from your areas December, January. Your profit is going to come from your June, July, August successes. And the more successful that we are in creating our events and building the 365 concept, the more profit is going to go into the people's pockets.
Greg, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us.
Thanks for coming to Knysna.